is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this replacement co-host. Our Lady Erin Brown has gone hunting Sasquatch, absent from the court, leaving her throne vacant and her microphone cold. And in her stead, a new sun rises, a curator of the image, a gatekeeper of festivals, a usurper of the headphones. Jennifer Trujillo, she who has crossed the Rubicon of the festival circuit to claim the seat of Erin Brown. Jennifer, do you feel the heavy crown? Do you feel the weight pressing down upon your brow?
I'm just here to make sure you don't screw this up. I do, however, feel the absence of Erin's presence. Don't forget to introduce our guest.
Oh yeah! Joining us today to talk about his journey from the short deMonica to writing, directing, and partially self-financing the feature The Shadow of the Sun is the filmmaker Miguel Ángel Ferrer. Joining the panel, we have Nicole de Meneses, Jennifer Trujillo, Sila Blume, and of course, myself. It sounds like I'm going to be the only Anglo on this panel. I'm Eric Trometer.
Soy Jennifer Trujillo.
Soy Nicole de Meneses.
Soy Sila Blume.
Y yo soy Miguel Ángel Ferrer y esto es World Cinema History.
For those of you who haven't seen it, The Shadow of the Sun is set in Acarigua, Venezuela. It follows Leo and his deaf brother Alex on a 325-kilometer trip to a musical contest. But the plot is really just the frame. It's actually a study of what it takes to survive and dream in a place where the infrastructure, the power, the money, the safety is actively failing. Miguel, when you look back on that journey on screen, how much of it reflects the actual struggle that you faced just to get this film made?
You know that saying, art imitates life, life imitates art. It was only after seeing it on screen several times in festivals that, you get to step back and see it from a 30,000 foot view, and now you see what you've done and people are watching it, and then now you get to meditate and reflect on it and you go, wow, this is very, very close to the struggles and the adventure that it was to get the film made.
We love an outlaw filmmaker here, and Miguel, I think you fit the bill. Most people in this industry wait for a permission slip or a financier to tell them go. Miguel didn't. He flew to Cucuta, Colombia, and walked across the Simón de Bolívar bridge into Venezuela on foot just to get to his own set, eventually betting his own life savings when the money bailed mid-shoot. Where does that level of conviction come from? And what was the internal promise you made to yourself to make sure that this story didn't die on that bridge?
Conviction came from the fact that I've been in the industry. I've been living in LA for 18 years. I've been in the industry for quite a while. And over 10, 12 years that I've had people tell me, yes, this horror script that you wrote, we're going to give you $5 million. This action adventure, we're going to give you 10. Just falling into a lot of false promises and things that happen through the industry and through people and production companies and executive shifts. And coming to a crossroads and saying, I need to do something myself. I need to be able to show people the skill set that I've acquired over the years, that I've been fortunate enough to acquire over the years, and how I can tell stories in a feature narrative landscape. No matter how much you tell people that you can do something, most people will say you can't do it until they've seen you do it. There's something about believing in a dream that only you can see, right? And it's happened to me when I was doing music videos and I wanted to get into commercials. Everybody said, you can't do commercials. You don't know how to. You're a music video director. And then I did my first one, and now I've done over 100 commercials. The same thing happened with this feature. The same thing is happening with television. I did this feature and still people say, you don't know, you can't direct television and you have to do it. And I had the opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I said, I need to bet it all and put it all on the line to show people that I can actually do this, even if it's on a micro budget, even if it's with the lack of resources that we have in Venezuela. I can put something together that rivals, a $5 million independent picture.
I'd like to pull Nicole into this. She has a lot of experience with micro budgets.
The film is so beautiful. And in terms of resources, I was just curious if you can speak to the specific budget, because the quality of the film is really there. It looks like you had a bigger budget than you might have. And I'm just curious if you can give us a little sticker price of what you were actually working with, and maybe then favors that you had to call in, because it's quite a big cast and looked amazing.
Thank you so much. I think the production budget ended up being about 119,000, right under 120, and then post-production was around 40, and then our Oscar campaign and everything else just tallied up to right under 200,000. Everybody that worked on this film got paid. We had a very fortunate situation in which our producer, Will Romero, is from Acarigua, and that's part of the reason why we set it there. We had several locations that were given to us as a favor. For example, where Leo works, that factory, that's with the manager of that factory is actually Leo's boss, who fires him, who's a great friend of our producer Will, and also now a great friend of mine. And we had the town of Acarigua. We chose it because we knew that there we had people and we had institutions that wanted to help us, and they said, "You want to come and film here? Absolutely. We'll give it to you for free." And then we said, no, it's okay. We can pay something. We don't have Warner Brothers money, but we'll definitely, pay you for your time and your effort, and we'll make sure that it's a great experience. And that was part of the reason for making the film too, is to build infrastructure in Venezuela and build infrastructure in Acarigua, where there is no film industry.
Well, I thought it highlighted the community and the open spaces beautifully. I love the look of, even when it's a hot day and they can't rehearse and they're at the watering hole, the fact that they would find peace and just like a moment of tranquility in some of those open spaces, and then would enjoy being in community and making music. I thought those scenes were beautiful. Even the scene where Leo is looking for his couch in the dump, but it's just sprawling space of garbage. There's something actually very striking and still beautiful about it, and you feel his desperation in those really wide shots of him just kind of engulfed by his environment. I just found it very powerful, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. We had a mission, Jose Duque, the cinematographer, and I, to capture the vastness, the vast length and depth of Los Llanos, of the plains. And that's why we shot it in 2.75 in anamorphic Orion lenses, and we decided to finish, instead of 2.40, it's 2.75, so it's just a bit wider than your normal cinema picture.
The landscape in the area is definitely a character, and seeing it on a big screen matters. For what it's worth, I lived in Los Llanos many years ago for about a year and a half, and You really captured, oh my God, I actually cried watching him go across on his motorcycle in the highway, because that highway that you see is the same highway from way deep in Los Llanos all the way up to Caracas. That's it. That's a highway. And just the huge expansiveness and the colors and the places and the housing and even the struggle with water, which I lived with. Amazing. So it really touched me in lots of ways.
What a wonderful surprise. I had no idea. That's amazing. Do you remember what city or town did you live in?
Oh, I didn't live in a town. I lived in the middle of nowhere. I lived at, it's not nowhere anymore, but I lived at Atomaso Guaral. I studied monkeys, studied monkeys and worked on the World Ecology Project, which is still ongoing.
Wow. Amazing. What a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I was a wildlife biologist and did lots of cool stuff there, from, huge crocodiles in the river to iguanas to the parrots to everything, parrotlets, everything. Just amazing. So
okay, cool.
It was so emotional to watch this film. So
Thank you.
I was just going to bring up some of the different themes that the film embodied, and just this, I was curious about the festival run and how you're maybe rolling it out to American audiences, because there are a lot of similarities with, another English language film called Coda, where you're dealing with family and music and, coming of age, following one's dreams. In terms of maybe seeking investors for this project, were you looking at some of these other films that had done well in the market? Did that play a part in choosing this subject matter?
No, actually. But what did play a part is that as soon as the Coda trailer came out, I said, oh no, what is this? It's a very similar it lives in the same galaxy at least. And I was very anxious, and I finally saw Coda. When I saw Coda, I realized, okay, there's enough differences here in this script. It's a different subject matter, a different ambiance. And also, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing something that has been done, and especially recently, especially in a really commercially known film as Coda. But as fate would have it, when we were doing our festival run and we were doing the Oscar campaign, we couldn't ask any actors to come and do panels with us because it was during the actors' strike. But the last week, the actors' strike got lifted, and I sent the movie to Troy Kotsur. I thought he was just going to, send us back like a pat on the back and said, great job. But he loved it. And he drove from New Mexico to host one of our screenings in LA for the Oscar campaign. And he's been a great supporter of the film and of Anyelo and of Angelo's performance.
I did want to talk about that pressure that you had in self-financing. So the story goes that a week into the shoot in Acarigua, the funding bailed, and you weren't just betting your savings at that point, though, were you? You were betting the careers and the safety of your entire crew. Did you feel a specific responsibility towards them, Miguel, to keep the engine running until you were able to fill the funding gap? Or was there a moment where you had to weigh the risk of actually finishing the film against the reality of what you were asking from your team?
At that point in my life, I was fortunate enough to have saved up some money from my commercial work. I had been looking for something to invest that money in for 6 months, whether it was a house, a down payment on a house, or investments, or all that. And when that moment happened, about 4 days into production, that I realized my last investor, whom we had been at his house for 2 weeks doing rehearsals, I said, this guy's not going to give me the financing. He's not even going to answer my texts. What do I do? Do I turn everybody back to Caracas and wait for the money, or do I double down? And, at that moment, I wasn't married. I still don't have kids yet. And I said, if I don't bet in myself, how can I ask somebody else to bet on me? If I don't do this right now, I might not have another opportunity to do this ever again. And I knew I was not only confident in myself and what I could do, given the opportunity, but I knew what Carlos Manuel Gonzalez was doing. I knew what Angelo Lopez was doing, what Gracie Mena was doing. And I saw that, I was witness to that. And I said, this is too good of a chance to pass up. And I knew I was going to be tight for about 1.5 years, 2 years financially. But, I said, if I don't give myself this opportunity, how can I ask other people to give it to me? They say, there's a saying out there that, they say the best investment you can make is on yourself. And so I did the numbers, I ran the numbers, and I said, here we go. And once I committed to that, it was actually very liberating. It was very liberating because then it was on me. And then I said, if this fails, it's on me. And I took the risk, and I can years, decades, hopefully lots of decades from now, go to the grave and say, I did it. And I have no regrets whatsoever. And I did it, and I created a situation with a group of people that were amazing artists, that are amazing artists in front of the camera and behind the camera. And we all came together and said, let's go and let's get this dream going and see how far. Let's go to bat and see how far the ball goes. And then here we are.
I was going to say, I love hearing that you bet on yourself and that you followed your instincts, because sometimes filmmaking can be very lonely, especially if the weight of financing and everything else is on your shoulders. And I love just hearing how personal the project was for you. It really parallels in the actual story that you told. I fell in love with those brothers. I really believed that bond and that story, and there's so much heart in the film. So I just love hearing how much the film meant to you and that you were going to make it no matter what.
Thank you.
Yepa, la verdad, la verdad.
Speaking of tight, shooting 63 locations in 18 days in 100 heat is a staggering pace. We were just on this show congratulating Jean-Luc Godard for shooting Breathless in 20 days, and half that movie takes place in a hotel room. You didn't have that luxury. You said before that making the film felt like getting the rocker out of you. But given your background with National Geographic, Nat Geo, how did you fuse that disciplined documentary eye with that rocker energy to survive that 18-day sprint?
Well, it's a couple of things. The first is, yes, that Nat Geo, put the camera on your shoulder and go down the mountain kind of vibe. And I love shooting. I love grabbing a camera. Obviously, since I was little, I was grabbing I was borrowing, in quotations, my dad's high 8 camera, shooting movies. And I would, then put it back in the box almost. Obviously he knew, but as if as if he had never known that I had borrowed it, right? The Nat Geo experience was amazing because it taught me how to frame and how to do things quickly and efficiently in very extreme circumstances, sometimes life-threatening circumstances. And then after that, I worked in Warner Brothers in post-production for 4 years under Michael Robin, shows like The Closer, Nip Tuck, Rizzoli and Isles. And that gave me a look into the machine. It gave me a look into what the studio system looks like, how to finish a product to that quality, that level of quality. And then when I left there, I had those two skill sets where I knew, in fact, talking about being a pirate and a rocker and I guess an outlaw, I would bring up things to the executives that sometimes they would tell me, just don't bring that up in front of the studio heads, because then we're going to have to do it because it's a good idea or because it's crazy. Those two skill sets is really what has allowed me to shoot efficiently and shoot a product in 18 days, in this case Shadow of the Sun, and have it look this way. I also I was the camera op on the shoot, again by circumstance, not because of choice, but because Jose Duque, our cinematographer, had never worked with anamorphic lenses. I don't know if you guys know, but he had never shot a feature before. He's a career gaffer, 35 years gaffing in Venezuela. A gaffer is the chief lighting technician on a set. He or she is the person that works directly under the director of photography, works with them to paint with light, in charge of all the lighting, the cables, how much, is it a 5K, is it a 2K, the bounces, how soft the light is, how hard, the color temperature. Him or her and the DP work together very closely to basically come up with a luminance look of the picture. And Jose Duque was a 35-year career gaffer. Nobody had ever given him the opportunity to shoot a feature film. In pre-production, he said to me, "Okay, so who's the cinematographer that you're going to bring?" And I said, "No, it's you. It's you. What are you talking about?" And he said, "What do you mean me? I've never shot a feature before." I go, "You're going to shoot this one, and it's going to be great." And then he said, "Okay, cool. Okay, what lenses are we going to shoot on?" And I said, "Anamorphic, Atlas, Orions." And he said, "I've never touched an anamorphic lens in my life. What are you talking about?" And I said, "It's going to be fine. You're going to be great." And then what ended up happening is that on the first day, and we had done some camera tests and whatnot, and he knew what he was getting into. But on the first day, he was just too... The composition of the anamorphic lens, especially because we were shooting 2.75 and we were actually framing a 3.0 format. He said, "Look, I don't feel like I'm doing this correctly. Do you want a camera up?" And I said, "You don't have to ask me twice." "Yes, I do." So I camera upped throughout the picture, and that also gave me a close sense to the actors and the performance. I had a great first AC and a great focus puller whose nickname is Harry Potter.
"You're a wizard, Harry."
Yeah, because he just wears glasses. He doesn't even look like Daniel Radcliffe, but he wears glasses, so everybody in Venezuela has a nickname. His was Harry Potter, and I'd say because he's magic, because everything was in focus and beautiful. You have a great team, you have a great DP, you have a great first AC and a second AC and a focus puller, and you can do that, and then you can direct and camera up at the same time in 100-degree weather.
How were you able to prevent the distortion in the wide-angle shots on the interiors? Because those were some very small interiors you were shooting with a very wide-angle lens, and yet you didn't have any of the mumps or the screen distortion that you normally associate with wide-angle interiors with an anamorphic lens.
That's a great question. We use only 3 lenses, a 40, a 65, and a 100. Obviously, an anamorphic, a 40 is more like a 20 or 21 in a spherical sense. And we were also capturing full frame, like the entire frame of the Alexa Mini. Every single pixel was used, and then we de-squeezed the image. So what this gave us, if you actually see the raw file, it's a much wider, like a much longer picture. So it looks almost like CinemaScope on steroids in a way. Or maybe it would fill the frame of those cinemas that have like 3 screens. And then I was framing for the middle. So whatever distortion happened on the offsides of the lens that was never going to be in the edit in the picture. Now you're speaking about lenses. We were very deliberate about choosing, even for our wides, our big wides on the plains. We wanted to show people how big Los Llanos are, but we wanted to shoot. We never even tried getting a 20 or a 25 or a wider anamorphic lens, because it took a little bit of a page from Peter Jackson. I'm sure he took it from Ford or Leone, but I took it from him, where you shoot your wides on a little bit of a longer lens, so you compress the background, because the background is so vast and those mountains are so back there that if you shoot on a 20, they're going to be minuscule. If you want, then we shoot everything with a 40, even the wide. Sometimes we shot the wides with the 65. And we brought that background and those mountains a bit closer to our characters.
But the depth of field remained, which was great, because you had the actors in focus and then you had the mountains in focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but right behind them. Did you have to use external lights as well, or were you able to just to do that with the power of the Venezuelan sun?
It is 100% the power of the Venezuelan sun. You don't mess around down there. I mean, I'm telling you, you go to places sometimes where you can be out there in the sun for an hour, 2 hours, and you will have first-degree burn. Like, it is wild out there. So we were very cognizant of that. And also, as far as lighting equipment, we had what's the equivalent here of a half-a-ton truck, not even a 1-ton. And Jose Duque also did all of this. In 18 days, he had 3 guys in G&E, and one of them was 65. When I say these things, and gaffers and DPs from the academy here, they ask me how is that possible? That's I don't understand.
In the Godard episode, we were talking about how he famously used a wheelchair as a camera dolly. What are some of those guerrilla hacks that you invented on the fly?
For the camera car shots, all the shots of Leo and Alex on their journey as they're traversing through the highway, in the best case scenario, you have an ultimate arm, which is a Mercedes van with a crane attached to it, and you have about 5 operators. It's about $60,000 a day rental, and it's beautiful, and they're used for car commercials. But we did not have an ultimate arm. That does not exist in Venezuela or anywhere near it. So we just had a pickup truck and a driver who had never been on a film set before, and then it was just me and about 3 guys from the AD department and the art department holding me down. I was holding the camera in the back of the pickup truck with an easy rig, and just, booking it, hoping, no helmets, by the way, because again, no helmets. To get a helmet over there would be waiting for 2 hours or 3 hours. So, we just, we tested the road. We made sure that there were no potholes, that there was nothing that was going to happen. And we did the shots just like that. And there's videos that I posted on Instagram of myself and all the guys holding me. And we're going about, 35, 40 miles per hour. My friends say, this is all great that those guys are holding you. But, you hit a pothole and you are all flying high. And I said, yeah, and it was we had a lot of fun doing it. There was also no jibs available in Venezuela at the moment. So for that first shot of the film, the literal first shot of the movie, where the camera's low on the ground and it raises, the one crane that was available was around $3,000, and it was in Caracas. So they had to bring it over. It didn't work out timing wise, and I also was not going to pay $3,000 for a crane in Caracas. And the guys did say, we do have a small jib that's for a DSLR camera that holds about 20 pounds. So I said, bring it. They brought it. We put a cheese plate on it. We put the camera on that cheese plate. It wasn't even bolted to the actual little jib. We put some safety cable on it, and then we raised the camera as the motorcycle passed by. A bunch of us were right under the camera, making sure that it did not, tip over and fall. Luckily, it didn't. We did that shot around 3 or 4 times. We finally got it. And then, we said a little prayer in thanks so that, the angels and God didn't allow the camera to break.
Well, I counted 3 times. It's especially noticeable when Leo was first going into his job, but it's also in Alex's flashback and one other time that I can't remember, where it appeared like you had put the camera on a hi-hat but had converted it into a tracking shot within the same shot. Was that all one shot, or was that editing magic?
There was a couple of those instances, but that first shot, the third shot of the film is when Leo's coming in, when we introduce the character, when he's coming in, pushing the bike, and then, we end on his close-up, and it's a tracking shot through the factory. That was actually a Steadicam shot. There is 2 Steadicam guys in Venezuela at that time. And then I called the one that I knew, who was fantastic. He came in just for that day, and we were able to do that shot that way. It's one tracking shot from the beginning when you see him pushing the bike all the way till he raises his head because his boss is about to rip him a new one.
It really creates the suspense, too, because you feel like you're late with him in that moment. And the fact that it's at a lower angle and you're shooting up into him makes the factory feel huge. And the space that he has to cover in a small amount of time feel larger. It's brilliantly done.
Thank you. We wanted to specifically in that shot bring the Steadicam guy from Caracas, but I said this is the third shot of the film, and this is the shot where we show people, the audience, and at least in my wish, we show, okay, this is cinema, because it's obviously inspired by so many different beautiful tracking shots from Ford, from Spielberg, and from the greats that had, all the money and resources in the world. So I said, we got to do something like that, but, our version.
Con espíritu de poder hacerlo. With the can-do spirit, you pulled off this film and all these things. It's pretty magical to hear.
Amen. Thank you. Gracias.
Miguel, can you talk a little bit about bringing some of these actors together? Because Carlos as Leo has such a presence. Like, he towers over a lot of the people that are his bosses or the local gang members. He's kind of like a lion of a man. He's just like lying in wait to possibly pounce or to, have a bad day. It's almost laughable that I wanted to, once he finally confronts that gang member, I really wanted him to hurt him. Carlos as an actor really brought a great performance. Is same with the brother as well, and I just thought they had so much chemistry as these family members. I would love to hear how they came together or how you collaborated with them.
I had seen Carlos in an audition for the short film deMonica. He auditioned for the role of Kilo, the bad guy. We were going to shoot that in Venezuela. And when COVID came, decided to move the production over here to LA and to shoot it inside my house. That's a whole nother story. But his performance was so amazing in his presence, just in that little short audition, that he stuck with me. And when I started coming up with the idea for this film, I thought of him immediately. And in fact, the same day, the same night that the spark kind of came into my mind, which was the scene between the 3 of them, that climactic scene between the 3 of them when Alex confronts Yolanda. I said, okay, this is the scene, this is what I want the character to say, and this is the brother, and then this is their journey. Okay, cool. I called Carlos and I said, this is what it is. I'm going to write this movie, but I'm only going to write it if you say yes to this role. He said yes, and I started writing it. Fast forward to the casting process, and he was very involved. Carlos was very involved. And Marcos Purroy was our casting director. They put together a group of 4 or 5 actors per role. It was a closed casting. That's where we saw Gracie Mena, Camila Curtis, Richard Clark. We put all the cast together, and it was time to find our Alex. The acting community in Venezuela is fairly small right now because a lot of people left. The television industry that we had, the telenovela industry, was completely destroyed. And then everybody left to Mexico, to Miami, to Spain. And actors really, make their daily bread by doing theater for the most part. And then the deaf acting community in Venezuela is minute, almost non-existent. We saw two young men for the movie for in the audition, and I wasn't really getting what I wanted. One of them was a little bit too old. They ended up being some of the friends that Alex has in the movie. And we were 3 weeks away from production. The producers, being great producers, they said, "Look, you got to find this kid in Spain, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and then fly him in." But I'm a Taurus, and I'm a little stubborn sometimes. And, and I say sometimes hopeful. And I said, this kid exists. He exists in Venezuela. We just got to find him. So there was 2 ladies that were teaching us Venezuelan Sign Language for 2 or 3 months prior. And I told them, look, you're tapped into the deaf community. Bring me every young man between 20 and 30 in the entire country. We'll pay the bus ticket, the plane ticket, the boat ticket, whatever it is. They got to be here in the capital in 5 days. They brought 8 young men. Anyelo was the last one that we saw. As soon as he came in, he was pure light. He didn't know what he was doing. He was flubbing the lines. He was nervous, sweating. But it was just his aura, his presence, the light, how he lit up the room. And then on his side, he answered on a WhatsApp group that he had with a bunch of the deaf community. He, by the way, lived in a place called El Valle, which is a slum in Caracas, like a very poor and dangerous part of town. He saw that we're looking for a deaf young man for a movie. He tells his mom and his girlfriend, "Hey, they're looking for this, but I'm not. It's cool, but I'm not gonna go because I don't know how to act. I've never acted in my life before. I'm working construction." And his mom and his girlfriend said, "You gotta go. You gotta go and do your best, and you never know what happens." To this day, he has won 4 Best Actor awards in international film festivals. Like I said before, Troy Kotsur saw his performance and is kind of taking him under his wing. He has moved to Spain, and we're trying to get him into the industry there. He did this wonderful thing, this wonderful timeless performance that has moved so many people around the world. And I think that one of the many lessons of that story is that sometimes you got to listen to the women in your life, Sometimes you got to listen to your girlfriend and your mom, and, they know best.
Well, you know what? I think he becomes everyone's little brother. Like, it's hard not to watch the film and feel like you know him or someone like him. So he did such a great performance, and they anchored each other, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, he worked his butt off. Like, he came in with his script. It was laminated. He worked with the interpreters. Then he worked with Carlos a lot. Carlos coached them, of course, and they became like real brothers off set. They would go to dinner together. Then I came in and we rehearsed, and he worked his butt off. I mean, he was doing the work of a veteran professional actor without knowing that he was doing the work of a professional veteran actor.
And now he's becoming one.
Yeah.
See, so you weren't just betting on yourself.
I was betting on what I call the invincible Venezuelan spirit. I was betting on the talent that I had seen with my very own eyes prior to making this movie. Treasures that are out there hidden, that don't have the opportunity. Here in LA, there's an amazing deaf theater called Deaf West. It's like Broadway. And Troy came out of there. And so many great actors came out of there, and that doesn't exist in Venezuela, not even close. So you have all these hidden treasures, both acting, musically, technicians like El Gocho Duque, like Jose Duque. And you go, how can I tap into this? There should be more of this. And more international film industries should tap into this. And how can I do a movie that shows them, look at Carlos Manuel Gonzalez, he's out there. Put him in a Mexican film.
He spent 3 months learning sign language.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. You can't get some actors out of their trailer.
Yeah. I mean, they literally worked their butt off. I think you see everything, all the blood, sweat, and tears that were put into the movie. I think you feel it subconsciously, even though you're not seeing the immense amount of work that you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. But it shows. It shows, and I think it will continue to show.
I did want to tie this in because we are a cinema history podcast. It really reminded me of when I was in college studying Wilbur Asha, who talked about the aesthetics of hunger, the idea that a lack of resources forces raw truth onto the screen. His famous quote was, camera in the hand and an idea in the head. To me, your use of the natural Venezuelan light felt like a way to show resilience instead of victimhood. It took the sentimentality out of the story. Was the poverty porn trap something you were deliberately navigating while shooting this picture and choosing locations?
Well, it was something that I wanted to avoid, in the sense of avoid as the main driver and aesthetic to the story, and as the main through line to the story. My idea was always, we're going to make a movie from Venezuela into the world, and we're going to make a movie about two men who get together, two brothers who get together to accomplish an impossible dream. We're going to set it in Acarigua, Venezuela. So the ambiente, la ambientación, the ambiance, the set, Acarigua itself was a big part of the aesthetic and obviously the feeling of the story. And Acarigua worked out. I mean, we were going to shoot it there because of our producer, Will Romero. When I went there and I learned the history of Acarigua, it just mirrored pretty much when I wrote Leo's character. It's a mirror to Acarigua. Acarigua was a city that in the 80s was going to have an international airport built, and it is the agricultural center of the country, but it was going to be prolific. It was going to be a metropolis. They were going to build it to be that, with the outskirts being an agricultural haven for not only the country but for the rest of the continent. There was going to be a lot of investment, a lot of construction, and all that started, and then because of some politics in the 80s, all that got abandoned. And then Acarigua turned into this place that had incredible promise, but was left there. And it was left there, and it was left there pretty much with its unfulfilled potential and unfulfilled dreams, much like Leo, and much like many Venezuelans. The idea was set these characters and make sure that the through line comes through about these characters vying for this impossible dream, this thing that's crazy. And then what happens when you set those two characters in a place like Acarigua, the obstacles they have to overcome, and the situation that they're in. To tell you the truth, Leo and Yolanda are about middle class, like maybe a little bit higher, upper middle class, like, yeah, right above middle class in Acarigua. The poverty that exists in that place is insane. And we actually scouted some of these locations, some of these communities that live with lack of resources, lack of running water, and lack of means. And I said, this is a good story, but this is another story. If I set the brothers to live here, it's something else. It becomes something else, and also it becomes too much of a protagonist. I want to paint with that color, but not make it the focus of the picture. I studied cinema, and I studied cinema history, and I loved watching movies since I was little. But because I moved to the U.S. when I was 12, and back in those days, in the Cuban American community, I'm half Cuban. Really, what I had access to was maybe the best movie from maybe the 5 Oscar nominees for Best International Picture. And then obviously I had access to all the American cinema and the commercial cinema. So my sensibility became a mixture of all those things. How do you infuse Nuevo Cine Latinoamericano and French New Wave and even a bit of spaghetti Western?
I saw a little Sergio Leone in the motorcycle coming up over the hill.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And I wanted to paint with those colors and try to thread a story that was entertaining and a visual language also that was coherent. We were very, very picky about what we did and how we did it. And it was just a wonderful experience to be able to grab everything that you know, however little you know of how the greats did it, and then try to emulate that in this format.
Well, how picky can you be on an 18-day shoot? Yeah, I mean, when you were working for National Geographic, how many times did you have to kind of set aside the perfect in search of the good? You can't wait around for the perfect sunset when you're on an 18-day shoot and it's 100 degrees outside. I'm just wondering if there was ever a part of you during that where you had to settle for good enough.
I don't recall actually a moment where I had to settle for good enough, because And that's really thanks to the actors that were in front of the camera and the technicians that were behind it, because they grabbed what I wrote and the ideas that I had, and they just lifted them off the page, and they made it they just infused their passion, their art, their soul into it, and they made it better. I'll give you an example. Jose Duque, the cinematographer, and I were talking about, the lighting and a bunch of different things, and then he said to me, what about this? What about if every time that the brothers are together, the key light comes from Alex, from the young brother. He comes from behind Alex towards Leo. And I said to him, so what you mean is that if Leo turns his back to his brother, he's in shadow. He has to turn and open up to his brother to receive the light. And he said, yeah, exactly. When Leo performs, it's the only time in the movie where the light actually comes from Leo when he comes down from the staircase, and the light is pushing from Leo to Alex. These little things. So you're asking how picky can we get? That's how picky we got. Doing little things. The characters never walk downhill. The characters always walk on flat ground or uphill. And the reason for that is because everything in Venezuela is uphill. Nothing is downhill. Nothing is easy. My characters were never going to walk downhill. They're always most of the time, they're going to walk uphill. That's how picky we got. And we picked locations that serve that purpose, even though it's something that I talk about and something that maybe someone on a Reddit thread one day will say, 10 years from now. But I think that the audience feels that. And to me, that's cinema.
No, I love that thought process. I was curious if there's any contemporary filmmakers that you look to for inspiration. Just one that comes to mind in terms of Sean Baker is notably, he likes to use anamorphic lenses. He likes to tell stories from slice of life that you might not usually get a chance to hear from. I'm just curious if there's anyone that you're seeing currently in current films that you're either taking inspiration from or appreciating their work.
So many, including Sean Baker. What he's done, Tangerine, Florida Project. What he's done is amazing. Jeff Nichols, Shotgun Diaries, I believe is Shotgun Diaries, Shotgun Stories. But for me, my first Jeff Nichols was Take Shelter, and that blew me away. And Mud as well. Very palpable stories that have an epic feel about them. Just they feel mythological in a way, even though they're about everyday people and everyday characters, right? And then obviously, again, because of that mixture of independent cinema, world cinema, I always, right now, in the last 20 years, it's the Denis Villeneuve, it's the Nolan, and I think that those guys grab commercial concepts and bring art into them in such a masterful way, and make movies for the masses, but that also have art and also stay with you. So many. Obviously the Alfonso Cuarón, the Iñárritus, Del Toros.
I was going to say, that's great. No, I appreciate hearing that. Your wonderful cast. I'd love to see Carlos in, a big action movie by Robert Rodriguez. Like, he has that look. I think he could be like, Liam Neeson, a special set of skills. I'd love to see him beating up somebody trying to save his daughter, Yeah,
100%. Yep. 100%. In fact, we have several scripts that we're developing, and every time one of my producers is like, "Can you imagine Carlos in this role? He'd be amazing." Yeah, man. And by the way, he does all this in Spanish, English, French, and Italian. Yeah, they call him the Javier Bardem of Venezuela.
I don't think any of them were able to shoot 63 locations in 18 days. So not to blow smoke up your ass, you're no slouch yourself when it comes to the aesthetics of hunger.
Thank you. It was also knowing, because Venezuela is the Wild Wild West, especially Acarigua. So it's knowing where the potholes were. For example, there's a power outage for about 4 to 6 hours every single day in Acarigua. Every single day, like clockwork. I knew this because I had done the scout and I had spoken to a lot of people. So then, okay, we need a film generator. But there are no film generators. There's literally only 2 in Caracas. There's none in Acarigua. So we got to get a construction generator. But a construction generator makes a lot of noise. So you have to park it 200 yards away from the set. So now you know that, and you need to send someone, one of those 3 G&E team members, to go run cable 2 hours before you land in that location so that you can have power when you're on set. Because otherwise you're going to get there and it's going to take 2 hours to run the cable. It was a tough decision saying, okay, we need to get a generator every single day of the shoot because, $500 a day for a generator, and you're doing independent cinema, and, it's a big chunk of money that you're not seeing on the screen. But it was necessary, and without it, we wouldn't have made this crazy schedule work.
Was there an element of life imitating art with the egg cartons? And you've told the story 100 times, and anybody who's come to this podcast because they're following you already knows the story about how you were inspired by the ingenuity of the Venezuelan people. But when you put that into the script, were you in a way kind of reflecting the things that you were having to do to get a film made?
100%. About, I would say, like 90% of the things that you see in the film are things that happened in real life. They either happened to me, or they either happened to Will Romero, or to someone that we know very closely, and that's why we were able to thread those stories. The couch, putting money under the couch, that's Will Romero. That's our producer. When I was developing the script and I was writing it, I sat him down and I said, give me all the stories. Give me all the crazy stuff. And then he said a bunch of things, and then one of the things he said, and I said, okay, and all this time this guy paid you $500, where'd you put it? He goes, under the couch. I go, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, like we don't take that to the bank. We don't trust the bank. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. You can't trust the bank over here. You put it under the couch. And I said, what if somebody steals the couch? And he said, well, I'm kind of screwed. And I said, there it is. That has to be in the movie. So I found a way to, weave it into the story. Money, obviously, being so important because most Venezuelans live in a situation in which they don't know if they're going to have enough money to put food on the table next week. Some of them the next day. It's a big thing. And also the driver that tells, that makes Leo believe in this kooky dream of his brother. And he says, fine, I'll do it, but I'll do it just for the cash because I need it. And I have a lot of funny, interesting stories from the production that I tell in panels, and people always have a kick at. What are the worst things, or what's the hard thing about shooting in Venezuela?
Looking back at the 14 international film festival awards that you've won, the lives that you've changed, you've created an acting career. Is there a part of yourself you feel you had to leave behind in Nicaragua to get this finished? And how has that experience changed your approach to the things you're working on now?
I don't think I left. I definitely left my heart in Nicaragua. Nicaragua is a part of me, and I'm a part of Nicaragua, hopefully, but I think that it made me better in every single aspect of my life. I think this experience taught me one very important lesson, and here it is. And this is where life imitates art, right? Art imitates life. We have to walk the path of our dreams, whatever that is. Being a radio host, being a musician, being a filmmaker, being a pastry shop owner, being a painter, being a businesswoman. You have to walk that path. You have to reach for that ultimate dream that you have, because in the process, in order to get to that dream, in order to achieve that, you have to be the best version of yourself. You have to become the best version of yourself. If you become the best version of yourself, that's for you. You become the best version of yourself for you, for your family, the best version of yourself for your friends, for your community, for your country. So you walking the path of your dreams, you have to do it because the world is going to be all the better for it. I certainly have been. I certainly had to make this. I had to become the best version of myself at this moment. And hopefully the next project will challenge me more to become an even better version of myself. So that's the lesson, and that's what Leo goes through. Big spoiler here for anybody who hasn't seen it, so just cover your ears. They don't win at the end, but they win. But they actually succeed. However you want to say it. He becomes the man that he's always wanted to be through the journey.
Well, I would say this. They win in different ways. They might not get what they want, which is maybe to win the contest, but they get what they need. Like Leo puts his brother in a place where he can be his authentic self. Leo is still... He's still with Yolanda. He's going to go back. He's set up boundaries with her. They can have a better... Maybe he's finally ready to have kids. He has his shine back. The brother, when he finally confronts Yolanda about saying she took his shine away, he gets that spark back, and that's what he needed. I will say this, though. After seeing this movie, I'm very excited to see more of your work. I really enjoyed... when we are ready to talk about your short film, deMonica, I'm really curious and excited for that to be a feature film.
Let's talk about that now, shall we? My first question on deMonica was how did it prepare you for shooting a feature? Because obviously those are two completely different beasts.
You know, basically the way that we wanted to shoot deMonica and the way that we wanted to approach it is, let's make this 19 minutes, look and feel as if it was a $5 million independent picture, as if you pulled it out of a much more expensive feature. And the way that it prepared me is, it was actually the first big short. I had done another short called Culpa, which was much smaller, 7 minutes. And this one was a bit bigger. It had an actor of just a legend, I guess, in Venezuela, theater and cinema, Francisco Denis. He was one of the leads in the second and third season of Narcos. He was in Jack Ryan. He's also an accomplished director. So having him on set and reaching out to him and showing him the script, and he was in Mexico City at the time, and this was September 2020, so you know, the year of COVID, and it was a long shot, but he read the script, he called me up, and he asked me a bunch of questions to see if I knew what I was talking about and why the character was important and why he needed to play it. And I think I answered the right way, and he said, great, talk to my agent and manager, let's work it out, and I can be there in a month. The way that it prepped me is that it was the first time I was able to grab and get all my colleagues and friends that I knew could work in Marvel movies if they wanted to, and or if they were given the opportunity, they're that good, and said, okay, we have this amount of money, we have 2 days to shoot this, it's kind of contained, how do we do it? And then they came together and we devised a plan to shoot this film in 2 days with $15,000. The production designer, Vin Sanchez Zambrano, well, I had 5 production designers here in LA tell me that what I wanted to do was impossible, which was to build the hallway inside my house in Highland Park in LA. They said it was impossible. I knew that it was possible, but I just needed the person to do it and to know that they could execute it. And Vin Sanchez Zambrano, who lived in New York, Venezuelan, by the way, when we talked, he said, oh, no, yeah, for sure. You do it like this, like this, like that. And I said, you're the guy, and I think we're going to become great friends. And to this day, we're, brothers from different mothers. And he's here in LA now. He's one of my best friends. He built this set inside of my house, the hallway. Again, 5 production designers told me it was impossible. He did it. When you see the film, you can never tell. In fact, when Francisco arrived at my house, he was outside. He got out of the taxi and he said, oh my God, this is a house. What am I doing here? Like, what did I get myself into? And then he walked into the door and he saw the set and he was like, oh shit, like, what? And he says this, he said the story several times. That once he walked into set, he was like, okay, now I know I'm dealing with real, filmmakers that know what they're doing. So he brought it, and it was 2 days, and we had a very tight schedule. It was 17 pages, 2 days. So it was a bit of a training for Shadow, because you had to shoot 8 to 10 pages a day, and then do horror and do performance and do some minor stunts, and all this in September of 2020. So it was that added pressure, of course. And it taught us to be able to do something with whatever resources we had on the table. That's what it is. It's like, whatever we have, that's what we're going to do it with.
I felt a kinship between the two films and relationships. It felt similar to me in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Subconsciously, but also consciously, they live in the same universe. I'm a big fan of like extended universes. Shadow of the Sun and deMonica actually live in the same universe, and sometimes we joke around and we say, and maybe the priest, maybe Bing knows Father Lopez, because they're both Jesuits. And I said, yeah, 100%. And Father Lopez is Bimbing's hero, probably. And there's even callbacks in Shadow to it, because he tells Leo, I'm not going to do this contest thing, but if you want a baptism, or you want to get confirmed, or you want an exorcism, you let me know. Donations are accepted, but you let me know what you need. So a little bit of a callback to deMonica.
Sila watched your first short film as well.
I happen to have watched Innocent Attraction.
Oh, okay. Wow. Way back. Yeah.
I don't know how I came across that in particular, but I decided to watch it. I found that very, very interesting. I don't want to go into that because that's not what we're talking about, but I think it is so many universes apart in so many ways from this film. There's a book I read 30 years ago, Brother of Sleep, written by an Austrian, Richard Schneider. It's basically dealing with a boy who is very, very special in the way he hears, his capacity to hear things that nobody hears, but also his capacity to improvise on the organ. The writer participated in a film about this book. The book is telling us that the music that the guy improvised is unheard music and it's not possible to compose that music. When he contributed to the film, I asked a friend of mine who saw the film, do we hear him playing in the film or not? And my friend said, yes. So I said, I don't want to see the film, because you cannot present music as something that is not composable and then show it to us. Mm-hmm. It just, for me, it's stupid. It's just stupid. Coming to your film, that's the contrast to it, that we never get to hear the music because it is so out of this world that is able to make the sun cast a shadow, is a boy who is capable of doing incredible things, just like Elias in this book. Mm-hmm. And we hear the result of the contest only through his perception. So we never get to hear the incredible philosophy that this boy explained to his friends in front of his brother, because we're only listening to what he hears in that competition. And I found that was tremendous, to be able to transcend the need of humans to hear, well, if it's so beautiful, I want to hear it. The lyrics are beautiful, everything, so I want to hear it. And you never allow us to hear that. I think that's incredibly well done to come up with a concept like that and prohibit us from hearing it because it's too good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was a decision that we toiled with. Do we show the song? Do we not show the song? It was part of the filmmaking process and the rewriting in post-production that we found the best version of the movie, in which the answer found us. Really, that's the short end of it. That the answer found us.
Now, to your statement before about being the best version of yourself in that question you were answering before, I find that is very much embedded in Alex, which I found extremely profound. This ambiguity that we find in society: should I come out of the closet and feel free, or should I, this indecision of how do we go about things that we want but society does not accept. And in the film, especially through Alex, not only through Leo but also through Alex, you are forcing him in the film to become the best version of himself by saying, I don't want to be in a cage. I want to be able to do what I am.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Do you consider that a spoiler, Miguel, or is that something we can talk about?
No, you can talk about it.
Because we happen to have a queer filmmaker and someone who runs a queer film festival on the panel. So, It seemed like a waste.
Well, I also think they either allude early on that the brother is gay, they make fun of him, or so it's, I think it's a given early on. It's just him being able to voice that at the end is powerful. Powerful just that he's able to be who he is in front of his brother. His brother accepts him, but he worries for him. He fears for him that he can't be that openly where they live. Mm-hmm. So it's such a, it's a generous sacrifice that he tells him, you have to be here. You're going to, I'm going to take care of the house. I'm going to make sure everything, you're going to grow as a person. And, I'm going to go back to where I live, and maybe we can grow the society, the culture can grow a little, and then you get to come back when you're older, more successful, or there's room for growth, and there's just the open discussion that they have is really nice at the end. I'm curious, Miguel, if you thought about, because it's a subtle thing, his sexuality is the backseat, it's not the main focus.
Yep.
And that's fine. That's what makes his character come off like so genuine, and you know, he's a complicated person. He's so much more than his sexuality. But there is a beautiful story there. Did you think about trying to get into LGBT festivals because there's a nice story there?
As far as getting into the LGBTQ festivals, I did apply to one out here in LA, but then Outshine in Miami reached out to us. We were going to be in Miami Film Festival, and through the grapevine, they found out about the film, and they found out that it had this part of the story, and then they reached out, and then we did that about a week and a half after Miami Film Festival. Yeah, it's been a wonderful gift. I mean, Vince Sanchez Zambrano, who was the production designer of deMonica, he's also the production designer of Shadow of the Sun, and he's queer. And when I was writing the story, I always remembered his stories of, living in Venezuela, in Maracay, in a smaller town, and the bullying, the homophobia, all that. And then I called him up one day and I said, look, I want to tell this. This is the film, and this is the story. And if I want to paint with all the colors of our country and of our people, I want to use this color as well. I want to paint with this color and talk about this and put it. It's not the focus of the story, but I do want it to be a part of the character. This is how I think it could work. What do you think? And then he became very key as to how we handled that, and why it's there in the nuance, right? And it's like you said, it's part of the character. It's not the focal point of the story, but it's also shows his strength and his valor, right? To say, no, this is who I am. It's not going to be a secret. And if destiny hands me a short life, then that's what it is. But I'm going to live happy. And we thought that was the best way of painting with that color. And I guess the reactions from the community have been so great and so thoughtful, really, because it's, again, there's always in the cinema, there's always this, in that part, I'm usually in the cinema for that part in all the screenings. And whenever he says it, and he tells his brother, I'm gay, and then Leo is looking at him, takes a swig. There's this tension in the air. Everybody's there like, what is he going to say? And I think is he going to disappoint us? Is he going to be, what is he going to say? And then when he says, like, you want a gold medal or something? I love that. I love that line. It's such a fun line for him to respond. The audience laughs because it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I'm your brother. Of course I've known, and I love you, and it's all good. That being said, back home, there's some dangers to be found with for the queer community. So what are we going to do about that?
You said that you have used that language before, that to paint with that color but not make the focus. And I agree. I think I saw that. Because I saw it a second time, I noticed better than on the first time that when he's about to say that to Leo, you could see him with a certain tension.
Yeah.
Not insecurity, but there's a certain tension because he wants to say that, which tells me that is a very important divider in the film, in my perception, where a different layer or a different part of the story begins, which doesn't last very long, but nevertheless, at that point, there's a thing that has taken off by him revealing that and him offering a medal. But in that moment, because he's kind of intention to say it, I sense that this is a moment where they are coming in separate ways. That's, even though he's not rejected by his confession, that begins their beginning into the separation, where one stays in Arikawa and the other one goes to Caracas. So it's a very interesting point in the story of their lives.
That's actually, I'm very happy that you noticed that, because I had a best friend who's still a friend. I had someone in my life that I spent more time with than my own girlfriend at the time. And he's a writer, incredibly talented writer, like genius level writer here in LA. And we were great friends and inseparable for so many years. And then at a certain point, he came out, and I actually didn't know. I had no idea. And he came out, and I was the second person that he told. And of course, I was, and he went, and I had a similar actually moment with him where, he told me, and I go, okay, cool. So what are we eating for lunch? And not to dismiss the gravity and the importance of that moment, but just to tell him, hey, it's all good. I love you, man. And, we're still brothers, But at that moment and throughout the years and the months, he had to go on his path, and he had to, go into the community, be accepted by the community, have new friends, and build his new life that he's been wanting to live secretly, and hadn't been able to, and now he was free. And then he had to do that, and now there was less time for, hanging out with me and my girlfriend and our friends, and that was all good. And we're still friends, and we still talk, not as much as before, but yes. And I felt that. And when I told Anyelo, who plays Alex, I told him that hesitation that there's a 1 second pause where he says I, and then he pauses, is because he's seeing that. He's literally seeing him and his brother, the closest person that he has to him, go on different paths, and he's seeing the future, and saying it's probably going to happen, even though we don't want, and we're still going to be brothers, we're still going to love each other, but now it's the beginning of my life and my thing in this particular facet. Anyway, so I appreciate you mentioning that.
I was going to say, from the queer and LGBTQ perspective, lived in my own life, and many people in my world, and all of the films I've seen in that space, I'm not sure if it was conscious or or subconscious, but on top of that gravity, that magnitude, importance of that moment it's huge. And maybe being outside the community, you don't get it, but even people, when they know their parents, they think on every level their parents will accept them, are terrified of that moment because of the chance of rejection, of cruelty, of death, it is gigantic. And I have watched and lived many a people having that moment of, you're dead to me, or, get out of the house immediately. Yep. Did you also think of that in that moment? Did that come through from your friend? Or is that just another bonus? It seems like planning and mastery in your filmmaking, but let me know what you think.
When that happened to me with my friend, he was, as soon as he said it, he was bawling, right? And I could tell the importance of it. And with Vince and the stories that he's told me, it's the same thing. And I can only imagine because there's things that I've, dreaded telling my parents, and it doesn't compare to something like this. And it's the what you said, it's the dread of ultimate rejection, of get out of the house, of physical harm, of whatever, right? Whether it's your friends, your family, your friends. So it is. It was a fine line that we needed to traverse to make that moment important, to make it impactful, to have it have the weight that it deserves, and have it represent so many people that have been in that situation, and at the same time have the warmth of a loved one that tells you, hey, it's all good. It's all good. And how would Leo, how a Venezuelan would tell you, and then we thought, well, the national language in Venezuela is sarcasm. So how would Leo, and we all understand it, and somebody sarcastic to us, like, we don't take it as like a jab, It's 95% of the time it's out of love, out of making you laugh, out of making each other laugh, sometimes through tragedy. And how would Leo say it? And then that's the line that Vince and I came up with. Even though he doesn't get a writing credit, I think that in some of the Q&As I mentioned that, he's definitely ghostwrited a little bit, especially in moments like that, because it's like, what's the mixture that can bring the best alchemy here for this moment? And we landed on that. Give it the gravitas it needs. Give it the warmth and love from his brother, and then, move on to the next urgent moment. And also have Alex, by the way, say like, oh, you knew? And with very little dialogue, like, he says, you knew? And he says, I'm your brother. He doesn't need to say like, of course I've known since you looked at this kid, when you were 12. No, none of that. Like, he says, of course, I'm your brother. Of course I know.
Bringing it back to deMonica, and just for Shadow of the Sun, it's a story about two brothers. deMonica, we're seeing two sisters, and love of siblings, and what would you do for your sibling, and but also in that one we get an interesting character who, whether she's gay or not, she has a certain haircut, and men treat her a certain way when they see her, and different slurs are thrown at her.
Yep.
The Maya character is a strong character. Her sister is in a brothel, and she's gonna fight to save her when she teams up with the priest. And so that character is an interesting character in that we get a small glimpse into that she's definitely seen some things, and her confession, specifically in the confession, admitting her different sins, then the climax of the short film of her sacrificing herself for the sister. But what I found interesting in just getting a little insight into her and how she's treated by the men in the film, how she stands up to society, and she's not afraid to use a gun. I just wanted to know a little more about if that character is expanded on in the feature. What more could we see from that character or the world that she will be inhabiting?
100%, and that was really the work that we did with Daniela Suaje, the actress, the Venezuelan actress, and also a dear friend of mine and a sister. It's funny, Vince I met in deMonica, Daniela I met in deMonica as well, and we've become a family here in LA. She brought a subtlety and a strength to the role because she was able to stand up to these guys and then do what you got to do in order to get the mission done. My mom, my sister, my grandma, they're very much that kind of woman. Like, I always equated them to, the Sarah Connors, the Ripleys. There's an alien coming to get you and you're going to destroy it, or a T-800 from the future, you're going to beat it. You got to do what you got to do. And in the meantime, you can still be feminine and you can show the strength of your femininity. And I love that about the women in my family who are badasses. And Maya is very much inspired by women like that. In the feature, 100%, there is a lot of expansion on Maya, on Monica, on the world that they live in, on the part of them, the part of the ambiance that they're victims of certain things that have happened, but they grab that and they say, no, sure, I was a victim of this, a victim of that, but no, I'm not going to let myself wallow in this, and I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to be my own hero. I'm going to get myself out of this. I'm going to do this thing, this impossible mission. I'm going to fight against the forces of darkness, natural and supernatural, and I'm going to come out all the better for it. I'm going to save my sister. And deMonica itself it's about forgiveness. It's about letting go of the crosses that we carry, letting go of the guilt that we carry, so we can be the best version of ourselves. We can make miracles happen, literal miracles happen. It's about redemption, about family, and about sacrifice. I think that Maya and also Father Lopez, they're almost like mirror images. That's why in the confession scene, the confession booth scene, and the short and in the feature as well, Brady basically tells me that you're just like me. I've seen things that other people haven't seen, just like you, just different sides of the coin. The power in her femininity and in her going to be definitely explored in the feature.
Will the budget be around the same as your first feature, or how's your crowdfunding going, or
I certainly
where are you the feature in the progress?
I certainly hope not. I hope that there's a lot more budget. I think that there will be. It's just a bigger picture. It requires more. There's action scenes. It plays more like a thriller with horror elements in it. It's like, I always pitch it as Sicario meets The Exorcist. So it has that tension and that grounded reality and real life horror that Sicario has. But then you add the supernatural element to it. And now, in religious aspect, and we're start talking about other themes as well. So hopefully, the budgets that we have now that we're looking for that are much higher.
In Innocent Attraction, is that the beginning of a serial killer, or is that just the imagination, and he's just going to fail with the second girl again?
Innocent Attraction. I don't know where that lives right now, but that was a short film that was a bit of an experiment that was written actually.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Because it doesn't tell you anything.
Thank you. It was written by the actor who played the lead, and it was an interesting part in my career where we were shooting things in the weekends, and this project came up and we put it together and I directed it, and in the end of that, it is the beginning of a serial killer. That's at least my.
Yeah, because the possibility is that he's only playing things out.
Right.
Or we are viewing how he plays things out in his head.
Right.
But nothing happens because the second girl comes and he's going to fail again because he's just a jerk.
Right. Yeah.
So the two possibilities are always there.
Yeah.
I now have to find this movie.
It's very short, but it is well done.
Send me a link. It doesn't even need to be subtitled. I'll use Google Translate.
It's in English actually, so you'll be fine.
The one language I do know, barely.
Miguel, how can we continue to support your work? And you have anything coming up that we can look forward to?
Coming up is a commercial that I did for the Olympics. So if we watch the Olympics and you see a cool commercial about a kid pushing a snow sled, send me some love. But other than that, on film, my next project is hopefully going to be deMonica, if not something else that calls to me. We are doing a remake of Shadow of the Sun. It's already written.
In English or in Spanish?
Yeah, in English. In English, it's two brothers in Corpus Christi, Texas. And they're Latin American immigrants, and it's the same story, but ambientada, like set in the Corpus Christi, South Texas, Tejano music culture. The contest is in New York. They go through some of the similar woes that we see in Venezuela, just a little different because it's whatever the reality is of that time in South Texas. And that came about because so many people were asking me, first of all, people were telling me that it was resonating with them in India and Mexico and Spain, here in the US. And then somebody asked me who has the remake rights, and I said, oh well, that would be me. Imagine this as a remake. And I said, oh, you know what, not bad. And I always for the most part, I like originals better than the remakes. But if it helps, if 3, 4, 5 years down the line something comes out and it helps the original, bring eyes into the original, then I'm all for it, as long as it's treated carefully.
Plus, the original content is not looked upon as kindly as existing material in Hollywood today, so you probably have a better route to a budget that way.
Yeah, 100%. And look, Coda was a remake, The Departed was a remake. So many great films have been remade. And brought to different audience and adapted to a modern sensibility or a modern aesthetic. If that is in the cards, I'm all for it. Right now, though, deMonica and a couple of other genre films that I want to tell, because it's really the story that pulls you, and to me, the characters are really the life and blood of cinema.
I wanted again to point out on the LGBTQ issues, I just wanted to give the merit to the fact that, just like other things that you did in the film so well, of allowing people to digest, think about something, ruminate, or swallow the medicine of pulling in the fact that the young gentleman that he was flirting with was beaten up and killed. I thought that just really added more importance and consequences and seriousness to the moment of him coming out to his brother. And so cheers to that. The second thing that I think you really pulled through as another character through both of the films that I've seen, which is deMonica and The Shadow of the Sun, is that people are people, that everyone is a sinner and a saint, everyone is good and bad, that and that the church, when it walks through the world, is in people, and that those people are flawed and are human. And I think you did an incredible job of tackling those consequences. I didn't know if there was more that you wanted to expand on or comment on of religion and priests and the church and faith as parts of your films.
I was raised Catholic. I'm very spiritual. I don't practice too much, but I do rely a lot on the teachings and parables of these stories that have lasted so long, whether they have been used for ulterior motives by the church or an organization. The teachings, the original teachings, the original messages, still stand the test of time, and they can teach you a lot of things. And a lot of, Tolkien is wrote inspired by these stories very much. And then I know Star Wars, Lucas, the same thing. There's always, I went to a Jesuit school my entire life, so I do know these priests very well. And I know that at least the Jesuits themselves, they were feared and revered by the church because they were the ones that, when in the 1500s, they were excommunicated by, I think the fourth time they've been excommunicated 5 times because they stood up against corruption in the church and in the defense of the natives of Brazil. They are philosophers, doctors, scientists, astronomers who ask you and push you to question the faith and to question and ask all the questions. Doubt it 100%. And then therein lies the magic, is that they let you question it and doubt it in school, and then in the end, without literally, you come back to, it's science and it's faith, and there's a marriage between those two, right? At least for me. These characters, whether it's Bing or Father Lopez, they have faith, but they're outliers, they're mavericks, they're pirates, so to speak, right? Within the organization, and they're the ones that will stand up for what is right. No questions asked. No questions asked. No matter what the consequences, no matter what the organization or the church says, Father Lopez did that in his backstory, and that's why he's sent to a very small town to be hiding, and they hid him because he stood up for what was right. And then here comes the opportunity to vindicate himself through helping Maya save her younger sister. He also has his crosses. He also has his guilt, things that went wrong, and he has to let go of those things and has to stop punishing himself or self-mutilating himself, just like Maya, so that they can do this miracle and fight these supernatural forces. You come at me with science, and I love it, and that's where I go to, but there's a big component of faith in my life, and I, for one reason or another in my narratives, I like to mix both and say, this is my answer, at least, and this is how I make sense of it. And I think that it makes the characters stronger because people want answers. And sometimes the answer is, well, I got as far as I could, and the rest, I leave it up to a higher power.
Looking at this journey, I'm struck by how the ever-evolving language of cinema isn't just about new technology. It's about the recurring cycle of rebellion. From the street-level truth of Italian neorealism to the rule-breaking of the French New Wave to the radical aesthetics of hunger, there's a direct line to today's independent cinema. Miguel's films are a powerful reminder that every day there are people, as Nicole DeMonica so aptly puts it, doing what they can with what they have and still creating works of art. Thank you for joining us today, Miguel.
Thank you.
Sila Bloom, where can people find you on the internet?
That would be at silablume.life.
Nicole DeMonica, where can people find you and Dark Rainbow Films online?
People can reach out to darkrainbowfilms.com, and they can also follow me on Instagram on Dark Rainbow Films, and for Blood and Popcorn on Instagram.
Jennifer Trujillo, where can people find you and the Gilbert Baker Film Festival on the internet?
GilbertBakerFilmFestival.lgbt, and on Instagram, Gilbert Baker Film Fest. And on the Instagram, you'll find a link tree where you can find all things Gilbert Baker Film Festival, and you can also find a connection to me. So please reach out.
And last but certainly not least, Miguel, where could people reach out to you on the internet?
Mostly at my Instagram at El Miguel Ferrer, E-L Miguel Ferrer. And if you want to see anything about the movie and where it's going to stream and where it's going to play, that's at The Shadow of the Sun.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Before we wrap, a look at February. We're taking a break from the French Road to the New Wave for Black History Month to see how those radical tools crossed the Mediterranean. We'll be discussing the surrealistic world of Mambetti's Tukibuki and the power of Ousmane Sembène's Black Girl. We're going to explore how these filmmakers claim the image for themselves. That's all coming in February, so join us then on World Cinema History.